Doctor, if you don't help me, you're never gonna sit inside your fucking TARDIS again! Clara, you're holding your hand up, but I don't know what you're actually... I mean it! I will throw it in! Throw your fist? No! Your TARDIS key! But you're not holding anything. Clara, where are my keys? I don't know. Oh, Missy, you're so fine. You're so fine, you'll blow my mind. Hey, Missy. Hey, Missy. Oops. Sorry, Doc. No travelling for you. Hello, my fellow Whovians and subscribers, and welcome to my review of the Doctor Who Series 8 finale, Dark Water and Death in Heaven, starring Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. We finally made it, folks. This is the finale of Series 8, Capaldi's first series as the 12th Doctor, which sees the return of the Cybermen and another iconic character who we will go into very, very soon. In the mysterious world of the Neversphere, plans have been drawn up. Missy is about to come face to face with the Doctor, and an impossible choice is looming. Death is not an end, promises the sinister organisation known only as 3W, but as the Doctor and Clara discover, you might wish it was. Dark Water and Death in Heaven, the Series 8 finale. I had not seen this story for a long time. It had been quite a number of years since I'd seen it. I think since it first aired was the last time I really saw it. I remember vague things about it before I saw it today. I remembered the Cybermen, and I remembered Missy. I didn't remember too much of the other details. So judging it now, watching it 10 years later, with a bit more knowledge of where the show went after this, I can safely say that this finale it's a real headache. It's a headache because half of it is really, really good, but the other half is really disappointing. This is a very strange Doctor Who finale. Like I said, half the story is great, half the story is not so great. So where do you draw the line? This is a difficult one to review because there's so much that I like about this story. There is some really good ideas, and this story was actually genuinely very moving in places, more so than I expected. Well, some of the execution of said ideas is not particularly great. Okay, the first part, Dark Water, is really, really good. I think the mystery is very well set out, and it starts out on a very emotional note. So yeah, not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but if you haven't seen it, spoiler warning right now, or if you can stay if you have seen it, or if you don't give a shit about spoilers, it's up to you. Spoilers on the way. So we start out the story with the death of Danny Pink. Yeah, Danny Pink, Clara's boyfriend, actually dies at the very beginning of the first part. He gets run over by a car. So yeah, the story starts out on a very moving note with the death of Danny Pink. Yeah, Clara's boyfriend, played by Samuel Anderson. It really is quite a leap to do this in the first part of the story, and it really hooks you in straight away, and it's a very emotional piece of writing, and it's kind of why I liked the new series when it started, was that they were able to take the concept of Doctor Who and make it emotional, and I really liked that it pushed Clara to the edge in terms of the way she was threatening the Doctor with throwing the TARDIS keys in the volcano. Of course, this proves to be a vision, which I suppose is a slight cop-out, but at the same time, brilliant acting from both Jenna and Peter there, because this story, more than any of the others, is where I really felt the romantic connection with Clara and Danny. Throughout the series, we've seen bits of Danny. He's not been hugely featured in the story. He is just a love interest, although he does have some emotional depth, and he does have some personal baggage that he's trying to get over because he was an ex-soldier and he was in the army. So he is trying to ease his conscience, as it were, and his romance with Clara was kind of helping him do that. But I really thought Jenna Coleman did a great job at portraying the grief of losing Danny, and it wasn't over-sentimentalized like Rose was in Doomsday, where it was a lot of crying. Clara's grief was very much more contained, and she was really driven to do some horrible things. Part of the problem of that is, of course, it still makes Clara a control freak, but more on that later. But if anything, that's the strongest part of the story, is the Clara-Danny stuff, which really makes the end of their relationship tragic, but also very emotional. And when Danny comes back in the second part as a Cyberman, it's genuinely heartbreaking. I'd forgotten that was what was going to happen. And when he's asking her to switch his inhibitor off, I thought they could have made a lot more of that, because that was a fantastic moment. And when she's pointing the screwdriver and she's really struggling, she's heartbroken. It's like she's going to kill her boyfriend, even though he's technically already dead. She's absolutely in bits, and your heart breaks. It's really good, really emotional stuff, and I really wish that the story had played on this a lot more. In terms of the Cybermen, it's quite an interesting way for them to return. It's a little bit out there in terms of the whole idea of the Neversphere and the afterlife and how they're converting the dead into Cybermen. I quite like that idea. I think that is a genuinely good idea, and it's very creepy, and it's a new way for the Cybermen to come back. The actual process of how they convert the dead is a little bit rough. They do explain that a bit vaguely, but I have to say, I'm all for that idea, and that is a really cool idea. We do get a bit of a nod to Brigadier a couple of times in the story. Well, Kate Stewart, his daughter, is in the story. We get the photo of Brigadier, which is really nice. Brigadier does reappear as a Cyberman at the end. Some people might be a little bit offended by that, because they might see it as something of disrespectful to convert him into a Cyberman after he's died. I can see the thing, but I don't think it really made too much of an issue of it. It was a fleeting moment. I thought it was quite nice, although the way that Kate miraculously survived the plane crash, oh my god, don't even get me started on that. So the first part is fantastic, and it's a really good build up to what is a very poor second half, and that first half is genuinely engaging and intriguing, and I think Capaldi's also very good when he gets stuff to do. This is part of the problem I have with this story, is that even though the emotion is very strong, the storytelling is not great. This story tries to push an agenda. I might get some backlash for saying this, but hear me out. This is my opinion. So this was at the point where, Matt Smith had left the show. The pretty boy doctors are gone. Peter Capaldi, an older man, had taken the role and assumed very well. And the Doctor's obviously going through this story arc of rediscovering who he is, which makes sense because he's just regenerated. And the very end seems clunky to me. It just seems like they didn't care about the Doctor's arc very much, and they just said, oh, I'm an idiot, I'm just a madman with a box, etc. It's like he's just telling us stuff we already knew. And what was the point of this whole arc? The story builds to him being made president of the world and being given an army for no reason, just to realize who he was, which is who we already knew he was. So the whole thing is redundant. I just didn't get it. I was scratching my head going, this is a mess. Like, what the hell? The arc has just gone. And the reason I say that is because they're really pushing the feminism here. The beginning of Death in Heaven pissed me off so much. Oh my god, guys, don't get me started on it. Okay, so Clara obviously is lying to protect herself, which is understandable, but they go way too far with making her act like the Doctor. It is ridiculous. She even says, I am the Doctor. And more to the point, they changed the fucking titles. Why did they do that? They did not need to do that. That was just so insulting. I didn't like that, because this is Peter Capaldi's show. He is the star of this show. He's been sidelined in his own story. I just don't like that. And this is where I start to really dislike Clara. As much as I feel for Clara in this story, because she's lost her boyfriend, it's emotional stuff, and I realize the pressure that Clara has been put under in this story, I really feel like this is the beginning of the end for my tolerance for Clara, because I just can't stand the control freak aspect of her character. Not only is she being all cocky and overconfident and trying to act like the Doctor, she's still a control freak, and she's still telling the Doctor what to do. Granted, there are times when he does tell her what to do, but he's the Doctor, he's supposed to. Clara is just, she's infuriating sometimes, and Jenna is very good in the part. She does the best that she can, but the writing makes her out to be this overconfident, pompous control freak, and it really is time to just, I just had enough. And this story kind of alludes to the fact that this might be the end for the Doctor and Clara, because they go back to the cafe, not the same cafe, but a cafe, to signal the kind of full circle aspect of their relationship. And I think this would have been the best place for Clara to leave the show. I think, honestly, dragging Clara into Series 9 was a mistake. And I think that this is the definitive end for Clara, because she's lost everything. You think the death of her boyfriend would be enough for her to go, no, I'm done with this. Danny's dead. I can't do this anymore. But no, she's sort of comes back for some reason in the next story, but we'll get to that later. But I just honestly feel like Clara is overstaying her welcome by being dragged into the next series. Again, Jenna's very good, but I think it really is time to change. I think it really is time for a change, because this character, they're just pushing her into this kind of feminist control freak arc, and it's just infuriating for me. Speaking of the feminism, here we go. Okay, so when I watched this story, the first time, I didn't realize that Missy was in fact the Master. Yep, this is the story where the Master becomes a woman. Now, watching it now, it's very easy to look at that in retrospect and go, whatever, it's fine. Because I know that the Doctor ended up being a woman with Jodie Whittaker. So it really doesn't matter anymore what we think of this, because I think the fandom has just accepted it, or at least most of them have accepted it. I wasn't too keen on the idea at first. I mean, Michelle Gomez does a good job. I think she's pretty cool. I wouldn't say she's the best Master, but I like what she did. She tries to keep up the kind of cuckoo insanity that John Sim had. Not as great as John Sim, but still to a decent effect. The kissing was weird. I'll give it that. So the Master kisses the Doctor out of nowhere as part of the welcome greeting for 3W, which is, yeah, stupid. What the hell? It's just to give Peter Capaldi a kiss scene. That's all it was. So yeah, the idea of her being the Master, again, it kind of is what it is, and I just accepted it now. But if people have an issue with it, then that's their lookout. The show was just kind of being pushed in a different direction. It just makes me feel sad for Peter Capaldi, because Peter Capaldi is great as the Doctor. He's great. He's very good. And this story, I feel like his confidence has really taken him somewhere else. And he's well, in terms of the story arc anyway, his Doctor has found who he is. This is great. But because of all this feminist stuff, the females are getting more focus, which is okay, fine, whatever. But they've sidelined the Doctor in his own story. He doesn't get as much screen time as Clara, which is a real problem for me, especially as this is Peter Capaldi's first series as the Doctor. And I feel like they are kind of making him out to be old and tired, which is not how it should be. His Doctor is brand new. It feels contradictory in a lot of ways. It feels like the story arc is saying to us he's rediscovered himself, but the way that it's presented is that Capaldi is, you know, in terms of the direction of the show, has come across as an old and tired man who is being, well, controlled by his companion. It just makes him look kind of weak in comparison to how other Doctors were. And that's the writing. The writing has made Capaldi's Doctor a bit weak and soft, where he can be blunt and direct at times, but he really should have more authority over his companion. And I just think that, again, this whole feminism thing, it's pushed a bit too far here. I'm not saying the story's terrible. I'm not saying the feminist thing is a bad thing. I just think it's oversaturated, and I just think they went in too strong with it, especially changing the damn titles in part 2. So in terms of the rest of the story, well, obviously you've got Kate Stewart and Osgood, who come back briefly in the second part. And there's a bit of a plane crash sequence, which, again, the whole Kate Stewart thing, what the fuck was that? I'm sorry. How can she survive that plane crash? That is ridiculous. Oh, the Cyberman caught her. Oh, bravo, Moffat. So lazy. It just feels like there's no passion anymore in this show. Like, they're just writing things for the sake of convenience, which is not how it should be. I really don't like that aspect of the show. And as for the music, Marigold does a very good job with the soundtrack, so that there is always that, especially getting into the emotional side of Clara and Danny. Speaking of which, Samuel Anderson deserves a mention here as Danny. He gives his best performance of the series. He is very good in this story, and that moment where he has to, he's toying with the decision to press the button to disconnect himself and then become a Cyberman. God, your heart breaks for him. I mean, that scene where he's talking to Clara on the video call, I was genuinely surprised how much I enjoyed that this time, because the first time I saw it, I remember not liking it very much, thinking, well, Clara was annoying me. But I really appreciated the emotion of it, and I think in some ways Danny Pink has one of the saddest exits of any, well, minor character in Doctor Who. It's really sad, and I was incredibly surprised. And again, that, you know, Jenna Coleman in that first half of the story is fantastic. She portrays the grief so well, but then it's the other half of it, which is why I'm so torn with this story. It's the control freak stuff, and then the story doesn't really go anywhere, because the Cybermen, okay, they just come to invade again, you know, big deal, all because they want to convert the dead, and they get very lost. It gets very convoluted as it goes on. Is this the worst story of Series 8? No, it's not the worst. It's certainly not the best either, but it definitely gets points for the emotion, and I was very moved. I have to say, I was very moved. If I was to watch this one again, I'd watch it just for the Clara and Danny stuff, because at least you feel as though the little romantic scenes they had earlier in the series had built to something. You know, he's not just a bland love interest there in the background. He does have a purpose, and his story as a soldier as well, I quite liked, especially the part when he sees the little boy again, and then he sends the boy back, and almost that kind of completes Danny's character arc quite nicely. And I thought that was a very good tie-up. So, in the event that this doesn't go on too long, I think Dark Water, Death in Heaven is a really it's not a great story. I want to love it. I really do. I can't tell you how much I want to love this, because I really like the first part. But everything I've mentioned, I stand by. I just can't give this a pass. I'm really sorry. Although the Cybermen are actually pretty cool. I'll give them this. I quite like the design of the Cybermen and the new voices. They are good, and they do fit with what's going on. For that reason alone, I think that the story deserves some credit. But unfortunately, it's not a brilliant end to Capaldi's first series. So I'm going to give Dark Water and Death in Heaven a 5 out of 10. Believe me, I was sitting there watching this story, waiting to decide what to rate this, because I was sat there thinking, what the hell am I going to rate this? Because I was so torn with how the whole thing was. It was ridiculous. That brings me to the end of Series 8, which is Capaldi's first series. And as usual on my Doctor Who reviews, I am now going to rank the stories in order of personal preference. I do mini rankings. I don't do ranking videos. I haven't got time for that. I just simply order the stories in personal preference. This is just my subjective opinion. You don't have to agree with me. That's absolutely fine. But this is just my opinion. So if you disagree, we can, talk about it in the comments. But just please be polite. And I'd love to hear your lists. So please put your lists down below. I'd love to know more. Okay, so there's 11 stories. At the bottom, In the Forest of the Shite. Number 10, Listen. Number 9, Kill the Moon. Number 8, Deep Breath. Number 7, Dark Water, Death in Heaven. Number 6, The Caretaker. Number 5 even, Robot of Sherwood. Number 4, Time Heist. Number 3, Mummy on the Orient Express. Number 2, Flatline. And number 1, Into the Dalek. Series 8 as a whole, Series 8 is one of those series that it's just such a mixed bag. There's such a hodgepodge of different stories. It's very up and down in quality, kind of how I feel about the latest series with Shooting Atwood, to be honest. I think Peter Capaldi gets off to a really good start in terms of his performance. He's very good, and I like his character arc, how he tries to rediscover himself in his new body. But at the same time, they don't really hit the landing with that in Death in Heaven, which is a, a real shame. But I like his Doctor. He's definitely a lot grittier. He's a lot tougher. He's a lot darker than Matt Smith. And I do like that different change of the character. I think it's nice to get away from the pretty boy Doctors, although comedy is not Capaldi's strong suit, but more on that in Series 9. This series is where Clara starts to annoy me, becomes more of a control freak, although there are good parts to Jenna's performance, so I think it's not quite as bad as Series 9, but I still think there's elements of good, elements of bad, so it's a very messy bit of writing in terms of the whole structure. And yeah, Samuel Anderson as Danny Pink, also a nice addition to the series. So Series 8 is I would say a decent series, or just below average. It could be a lot better, but it could also be worse. it's kind of all right. It is what it is. So let's hope that Capaldi's next 2 series are a lot better. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough. So what do you think of Dark Water, Death in Heaven? Please comment down below. Let me know. Please hit the like and subscribe button for more content. Please let me know your ranking is of Series 8. And stay tuned next time when I review Last Christmas, which is the 2014 Christmas special for Doctor Who. So until then, I'm Pajak's Perspective. See ya. Bye for now.